Oatmeal Carmelitas are a to die for. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but it is a classic baked dessert oat bar with caramel and chocolate chips. The original recipe was a finalist in the 1967 Pillsbury Bake-Off competition. I'm excited to share a twist on this classic dessert with the addition of chewy dried cherries. The combination of chocolate, cherries, caramel, and oats are surprisingly good. Let's check it out. For the ingredients, the cookie base and topping include all-purpose flour, baking soda, salt if you're using unsalted butter, old-fashioned or rolled oats, light or dark brown sugar, and salted or unsalted butter. In addition, the filling includes caramel sauce, whether it's homemade or store-bought ice cream topping. I'm using my homemade version. Vanilla extract, chocolate chips, I prefer semi-sweet, and dried cherries. Let's begin by preheating the oven to 350 degrees. You're going to need a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. You can either grease it with oil or cooking spray or shortening or butter, or you can line it with parchment paper. Parchment paper makes it easy to remove the dessert once it's baked. Now I like to cut the corners of my parchment paper down to the bottom of the pan, and notice the flaps overlap. Then you can go back, trim off the flaps that are sticking out, and the paper sits flush in the pan, and set that aside. We'll begin by making the oat base and crumble topping. So in a large bowl, we're going to add 240 grams, which is 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 4 grams, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. At this point, if you're using unsalted butter, go ahead and add a half a teaspoon or 3 grams of salt. But I am using salted butter in this recipe, so I am not going to add any extra salt. Then you just want to stir the mixture to combine. We're going to add 160 grams, which is 2 cups of old-fashioned or rolled oats, and 324 grams, which is 1.5 cups of packed light or dark brown sugar. Stir the mixture again. I find old-fashioned or rolled oats best in this recipe because they are thick enough to provide chewiness and texture. The difference between light and dark brown sugar is that dark brown sugar has a little more molasses and gives your recipe a little deeper molasses flavor. However, you can use whichever one you have on hand. Today I'm using a light brown sugar, but I have used dark. They're both really good. Be sure to stir the bottom so you don't have any dark brown sugar bits that are hanging out. We're going to add 283 grams, which is 2.5 sticks of softened, almost melted butter, because we want it to blend easily with the dry ingredients. You can use salted or unsalted here. We're going to use an electric mixer to blend up the mixture until crumbly. However, if you do not have an electric mixer, then you could use something like a pastry cutter and then just blend in the butter with the oat mixture until crumbly. Since the butter is really soft, you may just want to use a spoon. And you can see that it just crumbled up nicely. We're going to remove about half of the mixture, which is about 3 cups, set it aside in another bowl. This is what's going to be our crumble topping. We're going to press the remaining oat mixture into the prepared pan. Press the mixture down evenly into the pan, up to the edges and in the corners. If the mixture is sticking to your fingers, you can always spray your hands with cooking spray or add a little bit of flour. You want to make sure that you cover the entire bottom and the edges into the corners. Now that our mixture is pressed completely in the bottom of the pan, we're going to bake this for only 10 minutes in the preheated oven. We are par-baking only. We will bake it completely when all the toppings are added. Meanwhile, let's make the caramel filling. In a measuring cup or small bowl, you're going to add 1 cup of caramel sauce. This is my homemade version. You can find the recipe in the description below. You can also use just a prepared full jar of ice cream caramel topping. To this, regardless of what you use, you're going to add 1 teaspoon, which is about 5 milliliters of vanilla for that vanilla flavoring. And we're also going to add 22 grams, which is 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And because caramel sauce tends to be thin, what the flour is going to do is thicken it up as it bakes so that it doesn't ooze too much out of our bars. We want it to be thick and hold together. Use a whisk and then blend it until the flour is all smoothed out. And then we're just gonna set this aside until our bottom layer has par-baked. Remove the par-baked crust from the oven. Notice it is light in color and not fully baked. We're gonna take our caramel sauce and we're just going to pour it all over the base. Just cover the base entirely. You can use a spoon to smooth it out. Notice I didn't even have to use a spoon to smooth it out. It just smoothed itself out because it was warm. A bit warm enough, but also it's a smooth sauce. So I have a total of 160 grams of chocolate chips here, which is 3/4 of a cup and 1/4 of a cup, but a cup total. I've separated them because I'm gonna place most of them on top of the caramel and the others I'm gonna place on top of the crumble. Go ahead and scatter your chocolate chips. This is 120 grams or 3/4 of a cup all the way around. And we're gonna add 142 grams, which is a 5-ounce package of dried cherries, or 1 cup. And we're just gonna scatter those all around too. Notice how thick these cherries are, how big they are. They add such an incredible chewiness and fruit addition to this dish. You wanna scatter those around really well so that you can get a bite of cherry. Oh, they smell so good. All right, now we're gonna sprinkle the remaining bit of our crumble just over the top. You don't need to press this down, just let it sit on top. As this bakes, the top crumble will spread out and it'll pretty much bake all together. And for a good measure, we're gonna sprinkle on the remaining 40 grams, which is 1/4 cup of chocolate chips. And this is mainly just for the visual, and it's to yell, hello, chocolate is in the house. It's all done. Let's take it to the oven. So we're gonna return this to the oven and we're gonna bake another 22 to 25 minutes or until the edges are set. The center might still be a little jiggly. In the oven it goes. Our chocolate and cherries caramel oat bars are out of the oven. Right now they're really puffy and they will sink as it cools. You can see the caramel around has popped up through the oat crumble. I like having added chocolate chips at the end because now we can tell that there is chocolate in there. Since we didn't press down the crumble, our bars here have some height and texture to the visual appeal. Cool the dessert in the pan on a cooling rack for several hours to cool completely. If you need to cut them sooner, allow them to cool for at least an hour at room temperature, then place the pan in the refrigerator for an hour or so, and then you may cut as you desire. Now that the dessert is at room temperature and has cooled, we can cut into it and take a bite. Since we baked our dessert in parchment paper, notice that it comes up out of the pan. Even with a little bit of caramel on the edges, it still came right out of the pan. And now we just pull the paper down, like so. How easy is that? Okay, for these bars, I like to cut them into about 24 bars, but you can make them as big or as small as you want. These are really rich. I typically like to cut in half, okay? And then 2 on each side, so this can make them fairly equal in size. Notice I say fairly equal because it is eyeballing it, of course. All right, pretty good. Then you could cut 3 rows across, or you could cut 4. We're probably gonna do 4, make them a little bit smaller. See, notice how easily they cut. Such a great picnic dessert, workplace dessert. Okay, all cut. So that gives us 26 bars. So this is what 26 bars looks like. It comes right up. I'm gonna grab a couple of the center ones here. You can see the dense oat layer at the bottom. The center layer is clear with chocolate chips, caramel, and you can see a bit of cherry here and there. The base is sturdy enough to hold the center and all the heavy and light ingredients. The top layer has a nice oat crumble, so it gives it visual texture. I like that you can see caramel throughout. I like that you can see chocolate chips poking out. And the caramel has firmed. If you recall how runny the caramel was when we put it on the bars before we baked it, now it has solidified and firmed up so that it is no longer runny, but holds its shape very well with the other ingredients. So let's see how they taste. I love that they are handheld, making them such an easy party treat. Really good. I know you want more information than that. So on the first bite, I can taste the oats. It's clear in the crumble on the bottom and the top, along with the brown sugar. It has a nice molasses addition, which enhances the caramel. Of course, caramel and chocolate. The caramel is so smooth, it just melts right on your tongue. The caramel is soft, the oat layer is dense and chewy. The chocolate, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. I love the cherry addition. It adds almost an earthiness to these bars because of the cherry flavor. It provides a chewy texture to the center that complements the soft caramel and the firmer chocolate. You know, we really like the unusual cherry twist in both flavor and texture in these bars. And the homemade caramel sauce, well, you just can't beat that. So don't forget the homemade caramel sauce, but you can make it with any caramel sauce that you have. Store the bars cut at room temperature in a sealed container or bag, or in the fridge or freezer for longer storage. These bars are great any time of year. Serve them at your next picnic, church, or work potluck. Add them to your holiday cookie platter. Or give them away as gifts during the holidays. You can even play around with dried fruit and nut combinations to fit the season. Thanks for your support in watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, treat your family and friends to a batch of chocolate and cherries caramel oat bars and go bake the world.